I was listening to a right-wing commentator somewhere yesterday, one of the TV shows or whatever.
Wow, this guy doesn't even know the source of the arguments he's arguing against. We're off to a real great start, aren't we?
Who was going off on this rant about, the Constitution is really there to protect us from government. Well, idiot.
I don't think you want to go calling people idiots, Tom, especially considering that I can go through a whole backlog of really idiotic things you've said before.
The Constitution was written to create a government.
You do realize that those two goals are mutually exclusive, right? A constitution can both create a government and then protect us from that very government.
Yes, it constrains the government, absolutely. But that's not why they wrote it.
That's the crux of the reason why the Constitution was written. The people who founded this country, at the time of writing the Constitution, just got done fighting a war against a tyrannical government over in England, and they wanted to prevent a similar tyranny from happening here in the US. Now, of course, we can debate and discuss whether or not the Constitution was successful in doing so, but the point still remains that 90% of the intention behind our Constitution is to protect us from tyrannical government.
They wrote it because they wanted there to be a United States of America,
in which citizens would be guaranteed certain unalienable rights,
where we're all in it together.
What does that even mean, for us to all be in this together? All in what together, and how? This is just meaningless collectivist rhetoric.
There are things that can only be done reasonably by government.
Why exactly? I mean, government is made up of the same exact ordinary people like you and me. What sort of special magical powers do they have that we don't?
They can't be done by Koch Industries. They can't be done by ExxonMobil. They can't be done by the rich guy down the street.
So this is a false dichotomy fallacy. He's arguing as if either only government can do something or a big powerful corporation has to do it. As if we couldn't have small businesses and startups also tackling these various issues.
They need to be done by all of us, collectively.
But that's not what government is. Of course I don't have a problem with people voluntarily choosing to come together and do things collectively. That happens all the time under capitalism. But that's not what government is. All government is a group of people with the unique right to initiate violence against innocent individuals. It's force, it's violence, it's not cooperation.
And Barrack Obama, when he went to Flint yesterday.
Flint, Michigan, where the government-run water system broke down and ended up poisoning everybody. How did government collectivism work out for everyone there?
Pointed that out very clearly. Now, let me just put this in context for a second. You've got Donald Trump and the Republican Party. Well, you've got the Republican Party out there saying you don't need government for anything. Most of the Republican Party these days is echoing the libertarianism of the Koch brothers.
Hey, pal, you just blowing from stupid town?
Since when are Republicans in favor of small government? They want bloated military and police budgets, bloated prison populations, the war on drugs, immigration restrictions, restrictions on LGBT rights, restrictions on abortion. These are all things that libertarians are against.
It's because through their various foundations and, Americans for Prosperity and everything else, they're funding so many of these Republican politicians, or they're a consequential source of funding for them.
Do you have any sources of proof for this claim? Such as a page from Koch Industries' website showing these organizations as media partners? Or some type of spreadsheet showing the financial data of these companies and what their contributions are to these various organizations? Or are you just pulling this claim out of your ass?
That these Republican politicians have to lie about science.
Now, there's a claim that aged very, very poorly, especially when you consider how much the left lied about science during the whole COVID pandemic.
So there's no such thing as global warming.
Mr. Strawman, give me a break.
Most people who are skeptical of global warming don't necessarily deny the existence of global warming. Rather, they argue that there are aspects of the issue that aren't exactly clear. For example, how much and how quickly is the Earth warming? To what extent is it a problem? What are the long-term ramifications of it? What are the best mitigation strategies? Not everyone who has questions about global warming is automatically some kind of climate-denying conspiracy theorist.
And they have to, they have to genuflect to the billionaires.
You act like there aren't billionaires who seek to benefit from the climate alarmism, such as solar panel and electric car manufacturers.
And part of that genuflection, part of that, thing is the suggestion that, as Maggie Thatcher famously said, there's no such thing as society. There's only a collection of individuals.
Nigga, what?
It's not a suggestion. That's literally what the definition of society is, a group of individuals. Society consists of individuals. You can't divorce the two concepts.
And if each individual is operating in maximum greed,
So you seem to be conflating greed and self-interest. They're not necessarily the same thing. What people who advocate for capitalism and free markets argue is that economic transactions generally occur because both sides stand to benefit from them. Both parties to a transaction go into it with the intention of furthering their own interests, and both parties are better off as a result afterwards. That's not to say that you can't have charities or nonprofits or people acting altruistically in a free economy.
Then the best thing happens to society.
Hold on a second, I thought libertarians didn't believe in society or whatever. This guy can't even get his own straw man argument straight.
That is the libertarian philosophy in a nutshell.
Actually, the libertarian philosophy in a nutshell is the non-aggression principle. Don't hurt people or take their property. There, that's it. I don't get why this is so difficult for people to understand.
It's Milton Friedman in a nutshell. It's von Mises in a nutshell. It's Hayek in a nutshell. It's Ayn Rand in a nutshell.
So what, we're just going to list off a bunch of libertarian authors without actually explaining what they've written or actually believed in? Not to mention, I highly doubt you've actually read anything written by any of those authors.
Well, your president and mine, President Barrack Obama.
Yeah, obviously this video is a bit dated. However, the arguments that we hear in this video are arguments we still frequently hear to this day, so I still consider it worthwhile to tackle.
Went to Flint yesterday and pointed out that that's a pretty damn stupid concept.
You know what? I actually agree. Your whole straw man of libertarianism, as people obsessed with individuals and not willing to cooperate or work together for anything, is in fact a pretty goddamn stupid concept.
Now, he didn't come out and say it quite the way I did. He said it much more elegantly, as he is wont to do. I mean, this is a brilliant, brilliant man.
Jesus Christ, you can practically hear Obama's balls hitting this guy in the face as he throws his cock. Obama was nothing more than a corporatist shill for big insurance companies, as well as a warmongering dictator.
But here is President Obama basically destroying this libertarian/conservative idea that,
oh shit, fellas, we got destroyed by Obama. Damn, I can't wait to see this.
you know, you got to just pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Yeah, we like to encourage people to be independent and solve their own problems. How is that a bad thing exactly?
And we don't need no stinking government.
I mean, we really don't. There isn't anything that the government can do that a private organization can't.
We're not all in this together. It's every man for himself.
Once again, this is a massive straw man. No libertarian anywhere is arguing against people voluntarily choosing to come together and do things collectively. That happens all the time under capitalism. We just don't agree with the use of force or coercion. That's it.
And all that other crap, frankly, that the Republican Party has been peddling.
You do realize that Republicans believe in the same collectivist rhetoric that you do. They just want different forms of collectivism, such as the war on drugs and border restrictions. I don't know how many times it has to be said, but conservatives and libertarians aren't the same thing.
That the John Birch Society was peddling, that Americans for Prosperity and the Cato Institute.
So once again, we're just going to lump together a bunch of different organizations, not explain what they stand for, some of which even ideologically disagree with each other and act like they're the same thing.
And this morning I turned on NPR and I heard, and they were saying, well, let's go to somebody from the Competitive Enterprise Institute or one of the right-wing think tanks.
Yeah, just one of the right-wing think tanks, no one specific in particular. How are you going to argue against a position if you don't even know who it is you're arguing against? What a charlatan.
At which point I turned off NPR. Said, screw it, I'm going to get up and take a shower.
Good idea, Tom. Go wash all the stupid off.
It's like, I don't need to listen to this stuff.
Yeah, who needs to listen to opposing viewpoints? I'm perfectly happy in my echo chamber, thank you very much.
But anyhow, here's President Obama. He's in Flint, and he's talking about the importance of government working.
Yeah, of course, because a politician would have zero incentive to want to convince people to give them more power. No conflict of interest there whatsoever.
It doesn't matter how hard you work, how responsible you are.
Yeah, your own hard work and responsibility doesn't mean anything, because politicians like this jackass will just help themselves to a portion of what you earn. Remember, this is the same guy who said that business owners aren't actually responsible for their own success.
How well you raise your kids.
Because raising your kids is obviously the government's job. Send them to one of our state-run indoctrination camps, or they'll be bored out of their mind for 8 hours a day.
You can't set up a whole water system for a city. That's not something you do by yourself. You do it with other people.
Yeah, tell that to all the people who have their own well or rain collector or purification system.
You can't hire your own fire department.
An overwhelming majority of fire departments in the U.S. are fully volunteer.
Or your own police force.
There are neighborhoods in Detroit that actually replaced their police force with a private security firm. Not only was the private security cheaper, but also better at stopping crime.
Or your own army.
Yeah, because without the government military, who's going to spend half your paycheck blowing up innocent people across the world?
There are things we have to do together.
People who advocate for free markets aren't saying we shouldn't do things together, quite the opposite. The free market is as efficient as it is precisely because people interact and cooperate with each other. We're not against people coming together and doing things as a group, we just don't think it should be forced onto people.
Basic things that we all benefit from.
So if we all benefit from these things, then why exactly do we have to be forced to pay for them? Wouldn't people be voluntarily willing to pay for something if it benefits them?
Volunteers don't build county water systems.
So if people aren't voluntarily willing to provide fresh drinking water, then can you explain to me exactly why it is that bottled water is a multi-billion-dollar-a-year industry? Companies are willing to go through the effort of importing water from halfway across the planet just because there's so much demand for fresh, clean drinking water.
And keep lead from leaching into our drinking glasses.
Well, apparently government can't do that either, since, again, the Flint water crisis happened because of a government-run water company.
We can't rely on faith groups to reinforce bridges.
Well, now that's a straw man if I've ever heard one. Who's arguing that faith groups should be the ones to help reinforce bridges? Now, a faith group could maintain a bridge, say, in a low-income neighborhood or to a church or something. That is a possibility, but more likely, it would probably be a private road company or some type of delivery company that relies on a certain path that goes over a river that would maintain the bridge.
And repave runways at the airport.
London's Heathrow Airport is one of the world's busiest airports. It's fully owned and operated privately, and the runways there are maintained just fine.
We can't ask second graders, even ones as patriotic as Isaiah Britt, who raised all that money, to raise enough money to keep our kids healthy.
No, so instead let's subject them to a government-run healthcare system where they can die on a waiting list. Before government drove them out of business, there was something called fraternal societies, or lodge practice. This was basically a lodge where someone could sign up to be a member and afford a year's worth of healthcare on a day's worth of pay.
You hear a lot about government overreach. Oh, he's for big government. Listen, it's not government overreach to say that our government's responsible for making sure you can wash your hands in your own sink, or shower in your own home, or cook for your family.
Actually, it is government overreach, because when the government decides to come in and monopolize a service, be it water or anything else, they are forcibly removing the freedom of choice of anyone who consumes that service. So yes, it is government overreach to say that the government, and only the government, should be responsible for providing people with fresh water.
These are the most basic services.
Did you know that there are actually instances of people out there who own their own wells or septic tanks being forced to connect to the government's public utility systems? You know, if government services are just so dang swell, then why do I have to be forced to use them?
There's no more basic element sustaining human life than water.
Yes, which is why humans have for thousands of years been able to find ways to access fresh water. Purifying water isn't some magical thing that only the government can do.
It's not too much to expect for all Americans that their water's going to be safe.
In a capitalist country with free market enterprise, then yes, you can very well expect your drinking water to be safe. In a socialist country where water is maintained and controlled by the government, well, some of the worst polluted lakes in the world are in the former Soviet Union.
Go. And Flint is going through an absolute disaster right now, and it's as much a disaster as Hurricane Katrina or anything else.
Yeah, and I fail to see how this is a free market or capitalism problem, seeing as, once again, Flint's water system was government-run.
The difference is that the vast majority of Flint and Flint residents who are being poisoned are poor and are black.
Of course, make this whole thing a race issue. Could have made money betting on that one.
I mean, if this had been going on for 6 months to a year, and actually it's a year and a half, but for 6 months we've known about it in a big way. If this were going on in Grosse Pointe, largely white affluent community in the suburb of Detroit, in the direction of Flint, if this were happening in one of the suburbs of Washington D.C., one of the in Virginia, where all the mansions are for the defense contractors and their owners and whatnot, Obama wouldn't have just shown up and given a speech. President Obama wouldn't have just come in and given a speech.
Yeah, this amazingly brilliant man you've been talking up this entire video does nothing more to address this water crisis other than just show up and give a speech. Like, gee, how impressive. Literally anyone can do that.
There would be, well, Michael Moore was talking about this yesterday. There would be, 100 tractors and 1,000 soldiers, and they'd be ripping up people's lawns right now. Actually, they've developed a technique in Lansing where they also had lead pipes to run copper pipes through them without digging up people's yards.
Another innovation made possible by capitalism.
And they'd be doing it. They'd be on it right now. But we not only have a criminal justice system that has, two different separate criminal justice systems, one for poor people and people of color, and another for white-collar criminals, rich people, powerful people, and white people, basically.
I love how Thom Hartmann is just no fucks given with his totally blatant racism. Like, all white people rich, all black people poor.
Not only do we have two criminal justice systems, we have two disaster relief systems in this country. Look at how differently we responded to Katrina, how long it took George W. Bush and FEMA to respond to Hurricane Katrina versus, when some fancy white suburb in Florida gets taken out by a hurricane. Or, a nice all-white town, middle-class town in Oklahoma gets taken out by a tornado.
Yes, government always gives preferential treatment to the wealthy and the elite. And you think we should still trust them? Why exactly? Thom Hartmann acknowledges the government gives preferential treatment to politicians and their cronies, but for some reason still argues as if we should trust government as if they're the solution to all of our problems. Like, he can't seem to connect the dots. Anyways, until next time, this has been Philosophosa, making stupidity play dead. Everyone take care.